The people who have been here for more than 20 years and have American kids and have never gotten into trouble do not necessarily want the path to citizenship. They want a dignified life in the promised land. And that's why I call my bill the dignity. But first and foremost, we've got to seal that border so we will know who comes in from now on. But those who are here already, not the Biden migrants, the ones who came before 15, 20 years, we know. My parents are Cubans and they came legally, but we have so many people in New York City doing jobs that benefit us and our economy that do not necessarily have the same thing as the Cubans. So it's our time. The GOP can definitely lead the charge in this topic. Now, let me tell you something. In Congress, it's hard, it's toxic. No one wants to talk about it, but Trump can fix it. I am sure.
A few moments later.
The president has made it very clear he will not support amnesty for illegal aliens in any way.
So last week in a video that was controversial with some, but widely popular with most others, we covered the plan by RINO Republicans to essentially betray the Trump mandate, undermine everything that the 2024 election was about, everything that we voted for, by introducing the so-called Dignity Act. And this was a bill sponsored by Republican Representative Maria Salazar that would essentially give mass amnesty to millions upon millions of illegal aliens. Everyone who's been here for more than 5 years and just does not have a criminal record would be allowed here. And that obviously might be actually the majority of illegals in this country. And not only is it a total political self-destruction for the Republican Party, but again, a betrayal of the very values of this movement. Now, with all of that in mind, I have to bring you some updates on this story here today, because first and foremost, we have the good news that the Trump White House has formally come out and condemned this effort. They're saying they will never sign a bill for amnesty. They will not sponsor this type of move, as well as show you some of the updates here from Maria Salazar, because on one hand, we have conservative news outlets like Florida's Voice are covering some of the money that is being pushed behind this amnesty effort. And yeah, would it make it very surprising for you to find out a lot of shady financial interests want to give amnesty to illegal aliens, whether that's big business or crazy globalists like George Soros? And of course, Maria Salazar, the amazing Republican that she is siding with this crowd. But on top of that, I also want to react to the brand new excuse today that she is inventing as to why this so-called Dignity Act, which I think is a highly ironic name considering there is zero dignity to be had in the act of illegal immigration, that we got to expose here today, because it is utterly ridiculous. So with all of that said, we'll get into it. First though, folks, as usual, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Subscribing here, guys, is not only the best way to support our videos, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. By the way, I'll link it as like the card in the end screen. But if you have not watched our prior video on this effort, because I know this is not one of the most high profile stories, I encourage you, go watch our video last week kind of covering this whole fight for the so-called Dignity Act, because arguably this might be one of the most important things currently going on in America that's not talked about. Not just the push for amnesty, but the Republican betrayal push for amnesty. And with that said, we will briefly recap for that for you here today in this video. So let us have Maria Salazar herself, first of all, kind of once again re-explain what this Dignity Act is all about. And then I will show you, first of all, why it's such a terrible idea and what's now happening in this regard. Take a listen.
If you are undocumented and you have been in the country for more than 5 years, you do not have a criminal record, you're working and paying taxes, you can come out of the shadows with no fear and apply for the dignity status. That means they will pay a fine of $7,000 over 7 years, buy their own health insurance with no access to any federal programs, and contribute 1% of their salary to the United States Treasury. That is $50 billion plus. Just do the math. In return, they will never be deported. They will be able to go home for Christmas or to go bury their mother and come back to the United States to continue working and paying taxes. It gives them a dignified life in the promised land.
Okay, so again, I've stated my thoughts on this. I have major issues with it. I also think the 5-year cutoff is ridiculous because keep in mind, we're not even talking about people who have been here 20, 30 years. No, just 5 years. So that means including the migrant caravan that you may remember back to the 2018 midterms was a huge issue. These people surging to the border, pretty indistinguishable from the very migrants that were surging in 2021. I don't understand the major difference between someone who illegally migrated here over the border in 2019 versus 2021. The difference is there really is none. But this magical cutoff to essentially, give them what they're calling, these Republicans keep saying, it's not amnesty, it's dignity. Which has to be one of the wokest things I've ever heard. That's just a redefinition of language. No, it is literally the same exact policy. You can call it whatever you want. And we'll talk more about this, but I'd also like to further point out, when you heard all of Maria Salazar's arguments between this clip and what we saw in the prior video, it is essentially, and actually not essentially, it just is indistinguishable from the very language used by Karen Bass. What does Karen Bass say? They're part of our community, they need dignity, they're fleeing harsh situations, they want to be a part of America, and also they're so vital to the economy, and that's why, hence, they need to stay here. So, side by side that, Maria Salazar, Karen Bass, and tell me if there's any distinguishable difference between these two, and the answer is, of course, no, there is not.
Let me just tell you that the people that make that trek, many of whom walk from Central America and even South America up to our border, risk their lives. I don't believe that all of these people are sitting at home dreaming of coming to Los Angeles. They're coming here out of desperation. I don't know if anybody buys that here. First of all, we don't have, big fields in Los Angeles, so the agricultural piece does not affect us. But in terms of the hotels, absolutely, and that's a good thing. But I wish that he would look at the broader impact on our economy. For example, the construction industry cannot function without immigrant labor. Our fashion industry, where there's over 4,000 businesses, looks like a ghost town now. You hear people talking in restaurants all over about how they don't want to go out anymore. You have people that won't come out of their house because they don't want to buy groceries. You have churches that are on hybrid because people are afraid to go to churches. Why? Because there was an arrest outside a church. So all of this has created a feeling of fear and terror around our city, and like I said before, is a body blow to the overall economy.
So they should not be deported?
I don't think
they
so.
should stay.
Well, this is what
a million undocumented.
No, let me just tell you. What I think we need is comprehensive immigration reform. I served in Congress for 12 years.
And didn't get it.
And didn't get it. And why didn't we get it? I mean, after I left, there was an immigration reform bill that had bipartisan support. This was during the campaign. The president decided he didn't want to have it happen because he didn't want immigration reform to happen.
Yeah, so what's the difference? I mean that seriously. What is actually different about the rhetoric between Maria Salazar and Karen Bass? To the 1% of right-wingers who got really mad at my last video because I called her a rhino. I mean, frankly, maybe names are worse than that are more fitting there. No, that is a fundamental betrayal of everything. And it's also worth noting here too, by the way, I'm just going to repeat this really quickly once again. The policy of amnesty does not work. Okay, the argument that she is making is the same exact one as Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, who, by the way, was wrong about this issue. Even his own son came out later in life to say Reagan himself admitted privately he made a massive mistake with this, which was, of course, the 1980s amnesty bill. But you can even look at smaller programs like DACA and see a similar result because of this. What happens in amnesty every single time is that right-wingers and Republicans who support it always come out and say, look, we want to essentially do a trade-off. We're going to increase provisions for border security so there'll be no more illegal immigration, but simultaneously at the same time, so we'll secure the border, but at the same time, we'll give the so-called, as they say, dignity to the people who work here because it's good for our economy, and that's going to somehow reduce illegal immigration into the country. Well, not only is it worth noting two things here. First of all, the border is essentially on lockdown. We're at extremely low crossings. Nobody's being released into the U.S. Turns out we don't need your Dignity Act to do that. It turns out you can indeed just secure the border. It's not that difficult. But even secondly, noting, Trump already has endorsed a form of amnesty. It's called self-deportation. That's the amnesty. If you deport from this country, willingly so, you are not barred or banned from future potential visiting or immigration to the U.S. That's amnesty already. Some would argue that's too liberal, but I understand the incentive structure because you also want to encourage self-deportation. Okay, but still, right? You already have that. What is the issue, though, with the Maria Salazar or Ronald Reagan, as she'll so often cite, form of amnesty? Well, it's of course that it fundamentally, the incentive structure there makes no sense. It turns out that when you do a law nationwide, basically saying to the potential illegal aliens of the world, hey, America does amnesty. Hey, America is showing leniency to these people. Do you think that encourages more or less illegal immigration? Well, it's not a hypothetical. All we need to cite is the 1980s amnesty bill, which Republicans back then told us would reduce illegal immigration into this country. We only need to look at the ensuing 1990s. Go look at some of Bill Clinton's, ironically, in the Democrat State of the Union addresses back then. You'll see how big of an issue it is. You'll see that illegal immigration was a huge issue in the 90s. And then obviously the 21st century out of that. Yeah, newsflash, 1980s amnesty only increased illegal immigration into this country. And logically so here again, because when you encourage something, you get more of it. When you give positive incentives for something, you get more of it. And that's exactly what Maria Salazar wants to do. Not only give amnesty to millions upon millions of people, again, the migrant caravan of 2018, she thinks all those people should be getting amnesty right now. But on top of that, going to undo all of Trump's progress on the border. That's not a hypothetical. You saw that in the 80s. You even saw that back in 2014 when Barack Obama did DACA. And at the same time, you had a huge migrant crisis back then, if you'll remember, a very long time ago. But this is always, guys, what happens. And it's also worth noting, even on a practical perspective, I mean, not only is it wrong, principally speaking, but even politically speaking, the idea that Maria Salazar is now pushing this out. Oh, it'll be a good thing for Republicans because we'll show that we're lenient and we care and we're compassionate. No, just ask the state of California how the 1980s amnesty went. Let's not forget, California is the home state of Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon. It was a red state for a very long time. What changed in the 1990s that essentially it is deep blue now here today? You're probably never going to see a Republican win that state in this coming century. Why did all that happen? Oh, yeah, guess what? Because of the mass amnesty that vastly changed the electorate of California. Maria Salazar wants to do that right now to Texas, to Florida, to all of the red states of this country. It is an insane idea. It cannot be pushed back upon more, okay? And I have no issue saying, despite the people who got mad at me saying it last time, no, it is a disgusting betrayal to the Republican Party, to MAGA, to the voters of this country. And again, all of our central arguments about this are already wrong. They've already been debunked. We only need to look to history, and any right-winger who is still supporting amnesty in 2025, I don't know what to say to you. You're lost, okay? Again, just look at history if you don't believe me. Now, with all of that in mind, the good news is despite the fact that Maria Salazar in last week's press conference was literally screaming at Trump in Spanish, true story, by the way, screaming at him in a foreign language, demanding that he needs to do this, the White House and Caroline Leavitt have since come out and stated indeed, no, they will not be supporting the Dignity Act. They will not be supporting amnesty in this administration, nor should they. Here you go.
I have two questions for you.
Sure.
First on Congress. Congresswoman Salazar introduced legislation that would give some illegal immigrants in the country a path to citizenship. 10 Republicans signed on to what she's calling the Dignity Act. I'm curious what the White House's position is on the legislation and if the president would veto this bill if it made it to its desk.
From my understanding, the White House nor the president has actually read through this legislation. We've been focused on, of course, the One Big Beautiful Bill, which passed, which is another historic accomplishment of this president in record time. The Genius Act this week, the rescissions package, that's been the focus of the White House. But the president has made it very clear he will not support amnesty for illegal aliens in any way.
Boom, there you go. Straight up, we're not going to support this. We, of course, also have a statement noting here by Stephen Miller this month, pointing out that in 2018, the Republican Congress said they would only give President Trump half of what he needed for the wall in exchange for amnesty. Kind of a forgotten aspect, but Lindsey Graham and many others were pushing for this back then. Now Congress is giving President Trump everything he needs to secure the homeland completely clean, and some are tanking it, which ultimately in the end there, the big beautiful bill did indeed pass. But that's why it's so utterly ridiculous on top of that. Now after the fact, you have Republicans saying, oh, well, the Dignity Act includes some more border provisions. Like, we're going to do good stuff. Trust me. No, we don't need your stupid fake deal. We've already secured the border. We've already funded immigration. All of you people can shut up. We don't care about your stupid push for amnesty. And frankly, all we're going to do is sit here and ridicule it as we should. Now, with that said, so in the days since, Maria Salazar has now come out and tried to justify her push for amnesty from a political perspective. And her excuse here is utterly insane and ridiculous. So the reason she's saying Republicans need to get behind this and we're going to be screwed if we don't is because if we don't do amnesty now, later down the line, the Democrats will come and do amnesty instead. To which I, of course, say, what kind of argument is that? So you have amnesty, first of all, which is a fundamentally bad policy. Let's repeat that. And even your form of amnesty, again, you're not talking about you've been here 30 years, you grew up here, you're even a dreamer. No, 5 years, Migrant Caravan 2018, amnesty for everyone, basically, right? So the argument is that this is a fundamentally bad policy that would destroy America and also destroy the Republican Party, politically speaking, because, again, ask California in the 80s, the theory that because you gave illegal aliens amnesty, they will suddenly vote Republican is widely debunked. It's simply not true. By the way, it's also worth noting, I'd just like to point this out as well, President Trump won essentially 50%, right? He basically split the Latino vote 50-50 with Kamala Harris, best Latino margin in several decades there for a Republican. And he did so in 2024, campaigning not on amnesty, but on mass deportations. Isn't it funny how that works? Because it turns out you don't need to pander to Latino voters, especially the ones who would be more inclined to vote right-wing either, by being extremely liberal on immigration. It doesn't work that way. Actually, the biggest immigration hawk from the Republican Party in modern history also won the biggest share of the Latino vote. So all of these things are fundamentally false. But all of that in mind, her basic premise is basically here that, Democrats down the line very likely will do something that will destroy America. Therefore, Republicans should do it first so we can beat them to the punch. Haha, I'm so smart. I really gotcha. Seriously? What kind? The slippery slope. If we don't do it, they'll do it. Okay, but then let them do it. Let the Democrats do amnesty. Why should we be the ones to do it? It's a bad policy. Like, it doesn't make any freaking sense. But take a listen here for yourself.
We give them dignity. At some point in the future, another legislator will write another law to give them path to citizenship. Right now, what we need to do is to buy peace for these people, allow them to stay, to continue working, because they are needed. You see, what I'm trying to do is to bring some common sense, which is the least common of all senses, to this conversation. The economy needs them. They do not have a criminal record. They have not gone into trouble. They have been here for a long time. They have roots in the country. Let them stay. Don't give them any type of federal programs. And allow them to pay taxes, help the Social Security Fund, and let them stay and contribute with the economy with no criminal record. What is wrong with that? We need them.
So again, Karen Bass says our economy needs them. Maria Salazar says our economy needs them. What's the difference? Okay, but let's also hone in on this argument. So one of the cases she is making is because of the fact that her bill does not include a pathway to citizenship, that'll save the situation. But later down the line, Democrats will do it and they'll include a pathway to citizenship. Okay, that might be a fair point, Maria. If not for the fact that I have one simple question. So say you do the Dignity Act already, which gives them amnesty. What's stopping Democrats 20 years from now then just giving them a pathway to citizenship? As a matter of fact, it'll be easier because there's already Republican precedent for them. Hey, you did one step, so why not take the next? It'll literally be easier. It'll be easier for them to pass amnesty and path to citizenship after you do your stupid Dignity Act, not harder. It doesn't make any freaking... What are you talking about? Like, that argument makes no sense. It actually makes no sense. No, the only way to stop Democrats from doing amnesty down the line, which, as you even present yourself, is basically a political inevitability, frankly, okay, to just be completely honest about this, the best thing Republicans can do is, when they're in power, deport as many illegal aliens as they possibly can. Therefore, the Democrat political weapon that is just brewing in the weights, where they want to give them amnesty, give them citizenship, and take over the country and win every election ever again. The only way you can stop that is not by showing halfway measure and then being like, oh, haha, now Democrats don't do a path to citizenship. They will. Heck, Maria Salazar in 20 years probably vote for that anyway, considering how like the slippery slope of conservatives getting less conservative over time goes. You know how that whole story is, right? But, again, on top of that, no, the way you do this is deport them. You deport them so Democrats can't weaponize them. And no, we're not going to buy your Karen Bass style argument about their need in the economy or some garbage like that. But at the same time, I think we understand where this is really coming from, because it's worth noting. A lot of these Republicans are making the case that, we need to do this under the guise of being moderate, right? They're saying, we come from swing districts. That's why we're endorsing this very idea. Never mind the fact they won their elections, many of these people, in 2024 because of the red wave carried by Donald Trump at the top of the national ticket. Totally forget that aspect. But frankly, I gotta say, I don't think it's really about that. I don't think it's really about the politics of it or, hey, I need to win my district or something. It really boils down to a couple of things, but they have to do with shady financial interests, right? It is no secret that big business in this country very much would want amnesty because they would like to continue their policy here essentially of employing cheaper migrant labor over native-born Americans who actually would request to be treated like human beings, number one. But also, secondly, it's worth noting that people like Maria Salazar, the Republicans here, are of course siding with many of the groups tied to George Soros and the Open Society Foundation, which really should not be all that surprising. Oh, Open Borders Republicans side with Open Borders Democrats. Yeah, I think we know what is really going on here, but take a listen to this reporting here from Spencer Lindquist, actually old friend of mine, and Florida's Voice News in terms of what they found behind the type of people out there that are supporting the so-called Dignity Act.
One of the other things I want to get back to, the Representative Salazar and what you discovered here, groups tied to Democrat billionaire George Soros. Like, do we know some of them, like specifically who they are? Are they in areas, for example, that may surprise us? Because I think we've come to find out through a lot of transparency with the Trump administration that as the NGOs or the money spreads out, or places or people that have an agenda, it goes to very interesting places, some that you may not expect.
Yeah, so we do know the specific organizations. One of those is forward.us, and they've bashed Trump very openly, specifically his immigration policies. And they actually bashed Trump in this statement where they were coming out in support of the Dignity Act. They were decrying his, quote, attacks on immigrant communities. And of course, by that, they simply mean upholding the rule of law. Right. And they call the Dignity Act a much needed step forward, while also saying that their goal is a pathway to citizenship for all illegal aliens. This organization has a partner group called the Forward U.S. Education Fund, and they received almost $600,000 from the Open Society Foundation. That is George Soros' foundation, and that money went specifically for advocacy on immigration. We've seen another organization called Unidos US. They received $22 million from the Biden administration. This group, that money went towards a PSA campaign telling illegal aliens to get the COVID vaccine, if you could believe it. Wow. $22 million of our money, taxpayer money. And they said that we welcome the Dignity Act. This is a group that received, it's partner organization, it's called Unidos US Action, and they received $500,000 from OSF, also for immigration policy advocacy. So these groups are anti-Trump. These groups are in favor of mass immigration. They're in favor of mass amnesty for illegal aliens. And it's no surprise that they're also in favor of Rep. Salazar's bill, the Amnesty Act, the Dignity Act.
You know, sometimes in life, you don't need to overthink things. Okay, they're telling you this very straight up. George Soros, the Open Society Foundation, and all these other far-left Open Borders globalist NGOs are all endorsing this bill. And they're not saying it in terms of, oh, we're against this because this is a cunning move by Maria Salazar to take the issue away from our party. No, they're not saying that. They're outright saying, indeed, as Spencer there points out, this is a positive step in the right direction towards our ultimate goal of getting them a pathway to citizenship. So in their eyes, it's a step in that direction. It'll make it, what? Easier for illegals to get a pathway to citizenship after Maria's bill, not harder. Maria's making the opposite argument, right? She's saying, oh, it'll really stop the Democrats. No, the Democrats themselves, George Soros himself is saying, nope, this is a good thing. This only helps us get to where we need to go. So whose side are you going to be on in this situation, right? It's pretty straightforward. Who's right? Maria Salazar or the very people who she's claiming she's doing something to stop, openly endorsing the idea? Again, sometimes you don't need to overthink things. This is her siding directly with Soros and the Open Society Foundation. That's it. It's really that simple, right? They're all in lockstep here. So, you know, essentially she can sell herself as whatever she wants, Republican, conservative, Ronald Reagan. No, she's a Trojan horse, and it's not very hidden. It's not very something that needs to be covered up extensively. It's pretty in your face. It's direct. We know how it goes. So with all of that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this issue in the comment section down below. What do you think of the Dignity Act? What do you think of Maria Salazar? What do you think of the GOP push for mass amnesty? Let me know. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.